Hi guys, just wanted to do another quick video. This one isn't going to be on health anxiety again, but it's going to be on a subject matter that one of my fellow subscribers touched on. I'm sorry I don't remember your name. You've just subscribed to my channel recently and I know your name starts with a C, but you did a video on not knowing who you are, and that's something that really resonated with me, and I wanted to share my experiences with the same issue. So this video is going to be on the loss of identity. I think I have lost my identity at various phases throughout my life. And I think usually it happens as a result of some kind of trauma or change that feels like a bridge that has been burned and I cannot recross. So one of the first things that started to cause my sense of identity to start to fragment was my school years. Because I was bullied right the way through from primary school, right the way up until college. I was being bullied so much at high school that I opted out of sixth form and decided to go to college to see whether or not I could build an identity there, simply because I found that being around bullies was reinforcing the concept that it wasn't acceptable for me to be myself. So I think I struggled through a lot of school and college, and I can see in hindsight that I was struggling with my identity simply because through my college years I was chopping and changing so often to try and find a subject that actually felt like it was something that I wanted to do, because at the time I had difficulties in identifying what my interests were. So I think I chopped between beauty therapy, hairdressing, massage, accounting, photography, not social media, media studies. And I can look back and see the pattern of it jumping around all over the place with not really knowing what I was aiming at. It was a bit of a scattergun approach. I was just throwing it all out there in the hope that something would identify with me rather than me identifying with it, because I couldn't do that. So I used to go to the ice rink probably 4 or 5 nights a week, and that gave me escapism, and it made me feel like I could be myself, until the same bullies caught up and started using the ice rink. And I eventually ended up leaving that, even though it was my main interest. It was a real passion, simply because the re-emergence of bullying made me feel that, once again, it wasn't acceptable just to be myself, because that always results in people being cruel. So once I'd given up all of that, I struggled to find out who I was, because that had been taken away from me. So growing up, I played guitar every day. It was like a best friend to me, and some of my friends and myself, we got together and started a band. And for a brief period of probably about 3-4 years, I actually developed my identity, and I was able to express myself, and I felt for a while like I was being real, although again, in hindsight, I may have been real, but I wasn't a very nice person. So I'd created a version of myself that was more socially acceptable to other people, but inwardly it went against a lot of my values. Either that or I didn't have values back then, but I was quite a mean person, I would say, and very selfish, and I didn't have much empathy or compassion. So I think I started to struggle with anxiety around this period, and politics, and differences in opinion between myself and band members, and I started to feel the whole fragmentation process starting to deconstruct my my identity again. So I made the decision at the time that perhaps it was environmental, perhaps it was the fact that I was always surrounded by the same people because I grew up on the Isle of Wight. So everybody's everywhere and you know everybody and they're the same people just recirculating. So I thought it would be a good idea to leave the Isle of Wight and move to Portsmouth. So when I first moved to Portsmouth, I had a period of about 6 months where I felt like I was myself again. I regained my identity and I had good friends, social circle, and I was enjoying myself. Shortly after I moved to Portsmouth, I had been in a relationship in the process of moving from the Isle of Wight to Southsea, and that was very destructive, it turned out, and I felt that I was being exploited for my good nature, perhaps. And by this point, I wasn't a very nice person, but I didn't think I was that bad a person. I was still kind, you know, and perhaps naive. And the relationship actually caused my identity to really fragment. It got quite aggressive and volatile, and it ended with me going on to medication for depression for 2 years, and that caused complete dissociation in every respect. So after 2 years, I had to come off that medication. So when I came off, I thought this is great because it would give me an opportunity to rebuild myself and find out who I am now I've grown older. So probably not very long after that, I met somebody else, and that was another destructive relationship. And essentially, again, they were reinforcing the fact that it's not okay to be yourself, because when I was a kid, they would treat me badly because I was different, and because I looked different and I spoke differently and I had different interests. But then as I got older, with the relationships I had, then I started to feel that it was unacceptable to be myself, because being a nice person makes you an easy target. So I was going through the process of trying to put myself back together so I could find out who I was after all of those changes. So as I came off the medication in the hope that I could start rebuilding my identity and understanding who I was, my mum became sick, and she was diagnosed with cancer. So I didn't have time to be able to mess around with what was going on in my head. So I had to essentially choose an identity, because I needed to be a strong person and I needed to be there for her. So I actually, it was almost like a self-intervention. I went in and I changed my personality. Rather than losing it, I changed it. So I changed the personality, and I found it quite a lot easier actually through embracing the choice of personality and identity. Up until the point that I lost my mum, which was about 4 years later, and I was very close to my mum. I considered her always to be more like a twin than a parent. And when I lost her, because we had such a strong connection, I felt as if I had lost half of myself, and I didn't understand who I was without her. So I started to spiral and not understand who I was anymore. And as it happened at the time, I started to develop really severe health anxiety as a result. And health anxiety just put me into a different mental state that almost shut off all focus on myself completely, in terms of everything became a trigger to me, so I just shut it down, so I didn't think about it. So I tried my best not to think about anything, because the thoughts that I was having were anxiety based, and I was having panic attacks, and I went into survival mode. And I think my way of surviving was to shut down me and try and separate, simply because it was me that was causing these problems for myself. It was almost like everybody had been mean to me all through my school, and my boyfriends had been unfair to me and made me feel that I was a weak person or stupid. And then with this happening with my mum, I felt like I was punishing myself by being who I was, so I had to change it. So I went through probably about 8 years of health anxiety before I feel like I came out the other end and actually recovered. And since I feel that I've recovered since probably about 2016, I feel like the health anxiety part of my life has actually been dealt with. But it's left me in a situation where I feel like I've woken up from a lifelong dream, and I no longer know who the person is that's looking back at me when I look at myself in the mirror. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I want. I don't know my preferences. I don't really know my taste. I don't know how I like to look. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure what my interests are. I don't know what my agenda is. I don't know anything about myself other than my thoughts. I don't know who I am at all. I'm like, I might as well be just a mind that's been transplanted into another person's body. I don't understand it and I cannot comprehend it. And when I look back over my life, anything that relates to the past feels like I'm recalling somebody else's memories because I cannot relate to them at all. I know that I experienced them, but I don't feel like I experienced them firsthand. So it makes it very difficult understanding my past. And I'm in a situation now where I think, well, I cannot reclaim those people from the past. And some of them I do miss. You know, the me that was in the band, I miss dearly. But life has changed and I have changed since that point. And I no longer think that there's any point in trying to reclaim that person because I've changed a lot myself, so I couldn't be that person if I tried. So I look to my future and think, well, maybe the answer is to create an identity for myself so that I have an identity in the future. But that's very difficult when you don't know anything about the person you're dealing with. It's like trying to be a personal shopper in a clothes store when you don't know the person that you're dealing with. It's like, well, I don't know how to dress them. I don't know what size they are. I don't know what they look like. I don't know what their taste is. It makes you feel like you're actually looking at yourself as if that person is completely separate from you. And it makes no sense. None of it makes any sense to you at all. So I would say that it's only doing these videos that has given me a slight sense of understanding who I am, simply because I have a feeling that this person here speaking to you now is the closest I've ever come to coming in contact with myself. And that is because I'm accepting the fact that my identity is this fragmented person. And it's okay. It's okay to be that person, because this person that I am now has good values and wants to help other people, which is why I'm doing these videos. And I don't see that as bad to be my identity. So whereas before I was searching for it, I wonder if I've actually found it without realizing. Maybe my identity is this person talking to you now. I hope that makes some degree of sense. And okay, so I'll speak to you guys next time. All right then, bye bye.